Well, welcome to the 700 Club. $3 trillion more. That's what House Democrats say they want to spend to prop up the economy. Republicans call their plan a liberal wish list.
Meanwhile, Dr. Anthony Fauci warned about the risk of states reopening too quickly, potentially more deaths and even greater economic damage. Caitlin Burke brings us the story.
Testifying from home in self-quarantine, America's top health officials issued a blunt warning to lawmakers. There could be serious consequences if cities and states move into phase 1 of reopening without first meeting the White House's suggested guidelines.
My concern is that we will start to see little spikes that might turn into outbreaks.
Dr. Fauci warned without sufficient prevention, cities and states could be set back, facing more deaths and economic damage.
There is no doubt, even under the best of circumstances, when you pull back on mitigation, you will see some cases appear. It's the ability and the capability of responding to those cases with good identification, isolation, and contact tracing will determine whether you can continue to go forward as you try to reopen America.
At one point, Senator Rand Paul challenged Fauci on reopening schools and the economy.
Much as I respect you, Dr. Fauci, I don't think you're the end all. I don't think you're the one person that gets to make a decision. We can listen to your advice, but there are people on the other side saying there's not going to be a surge and that we can safely open the economy, and the facts will bear this out.
Fauci replied that his job is to advise according to scientific evidence, not economic or social impact. As the Senate grapples with how quickly the country can safely reopen, Democrats in the House are pushing for another massive economic relief package, costing an estimated $3 trillion.
We must think big for the people now, because if we don't, it will cost more in lives and livelihood later. Not acting is the most expensive course.
The bill includes financial aid for state and local governments, assistance for mortgage and rent, and more cash payments to Americans. But Republicans aren't convinced, saying more and more government spending isn't the answer.
Look, I mean, we can't spend enough money to prop this economy up forever. People need to be able to begin to be productive again.
Republicans had no input on the bill, calling it a grab bag of Democrats' pet priorities, referring to measures like expanding voting by mail and funding for government arts and humanities programs.
In terms of the House Phase 4 bill, it's got so much unrelated to coronavirus, it is dead on arrival here in terms of a viable idea.
This would be the 5th coronavirus relief package, and the costs from the previous bills are starting to show up. The federal deficit for April alone, a staggering $738 billion. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Well, we're floating our economy on what's called modern monetary theory, where essentially the Federal Reserve buys all the bonds that the Treasury creates. And so we're literally printing our way. That's how we're doing this and how we're floating the economy. But looking at these bills, you have to look at them from a political lens, and there's two ways to look at it. One, the Democrats are putting everything into this $3 trillion bill, and they're adding so many things over and above relief to people, and they're talking about relief to a lot of different organizations, and they're doing that intentionally so the Senate Republicans will vote it down, and then they want to run. We tried to help you, but the Republicans wouldn't let us. That's one view. The other view is it's a negotiation strategy. So let's put everything into this initial package, have the Senate vote it down, and then come into committee, and now we have a real bill that will come out of that. Any way you look at it, America's in trouble, and we're seeing it right now with Operation Blessing, with huge increase in demand for just the basic necessities of life, for food, right here in America. So with 33 million unemployed, we have to do something. We have to act, and we have to continue to act until we can come out from this pandemic. Well, in other news, churches in California are now preparing to reopen soon, whether or not they get permission from the state government. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. A federal judge has ruled California Governor Gavin Newsom can ban church gatherings to protect public health. But a growing number of pastors say Newsom has gone too far and needs to allow churches to reopen. Heather Sells has the story.
On Sunday, May 3rd, Pastor Sam Rodriguez stood in the parking lot of his Sacramento church, preaching to his congregation in their cars. He had gone online earlier in the week calling on church members to show up.
It may be selfish, whatever. I want to see you. I miss you.
Rodriguez, one of the president's closest faith advisors, has a plan to reopen his church in early June at 1/3 capacity.
We're going to maintain our social distancing. We're going to do everything right.
Rodriguez is one of hundreds of California pastors making plans to get back to church. Pastor Jack Hibbs of Calvary Chapel in Chino Hills is organizing a movement to open on May 31st, Pentecost Sunday. But that thinking doesn't mesh with Governor Newsom's, who currently has delayed opening of churches until the third wave of his plan, which is likely months from now. Pastor Matt Brown, founder of Sandals Church, is directly appealing to Newsom.
What I want from Governor Newsom is I want him to sit down with me, and I want him to look over our plan at Sandals Church. And we believe the church can meet together safely.
Brown is worried about the extended physical separation. Sandals leaders have called 20,000 attenders and found many struggling.
We have all kinds of emotional issues that are going on in our church. We have marital issues in our church. We're seeing a spike in depression and suicides and drug addiction.
Dr. John Jackson, the president of a Christian college near Sacramento, says churches must be allowed their First Amendment rights.
If it continues for months and months, I find it very inappropriate that I can go to the grocery store and buy a loaf of bread, be with all kinds of other people. I can go to the hardware store and buy supplies for my home maintenance, but I cannot go to a church.
But a federal judge disagrees. During a church lawsuit, he said that shoppers going to businesses for specific items is different from churchgoers communing together. Southern Baptist leader Russell Moore warns churches should not be treated differently.
The issue has to be safety. And so I think there are some areas where churches are treated in a different category that sees churches as being somehow less essential than other means of gathering. And I think that's a real mistake.
President Trump recently said he wants churches to reopen.
We have to get our people back to churches, and we're going to start doing it soon.
In this new COVID world, churches and government leaders must figure out how to protect First Amendment rights while balancing spiritual and mental health needs with physical safety. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thanks, Heather. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Israel today for his first trip abroad since the COVID-19 lockdowns here in the United States. And China is a key issue in their discussions. Sporting a patriotic mask, Pompeo kept his social distance as he headed for separate meetings with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his new coalition partner, Benny Gantz. Netanyahu said they would discuss the coronavirus, Iran, and the peace process, while Pompeo made an indirect reference to China.
I know we'll deliver good outcomes and decrease risk for people all across the world from this global pandemic. You're a great partner. You share information, unlike some other countries that try and obfuscate and hide that information. And we'll talk about that country, too.
Israeli media say one of the biggest things on the U.S. agenda is convincing Israel to stop Chinese investments in the Israeli economy. We'll have more on Pompeo's visit on tomorrow's 700 Club. Well, here at home, a federal judge has held off on a ruling over the Justice Department's move to drop its case against President Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn. Instead, District Judge Emmett Sullivan will allow outside individuals and groups to weigh in and challenge the department's action. Flynn's attorneys quickly responded in a filing saying, quote, "There is no place for third parties to meddle in the dispute and certainly not to usurp the role of the government's counsel." Flynn's case was part of Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Well, the Justice Department is considering possible federal hate crime charges in the shooting death of an unarmed black jogger. Video shows how a Georgia father and son chased down and shot Ahmad R Buries as he ran through their neighborhood. Now they're charged with murder. CBN national security correspondent Eric Phillips has more.
Ahmad R Buries' autopsy report reveals he was shot 3 times, twice in the chest, once in the wrist. It also indicates he didn't have any drugs or alcohol in his system at the time. Now, Georgia does not have a hate crime statute, but that does not mean this could not fall under federal guidelines. The Department of Justice will also be looking into how local authorities handled this case from the beginning, mainly why arrests just took place last week, even though the shooting happened back in February. This video released to the public last Tuesday thrust the shooting death of 25-year-old Ahmad R Buries into the national consciousness and jump-started the legal system to action. Within hours of the video's release, which was more than 2 months after the shooting, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations was put on the case. A day and a half later, investigators arrested 64-year-old Gregory McMichael and his 34-year-old son Travis, charging them with aggravated assault and murder.
I can tell you that if we didn't believe it, we wouldn't have arrested him. If we believe it, then we're going to put the bracelets on him, and that's exactly what we did.
Investigators say the father and son thought R Buries looked like a burglary suspect, recently seen on surveillance. This image shows R Buries looking at a home under construction in the neighborhood. Then there was a 911 call.
And you said someone's breaking into it right now?
No, it's all open. It's under construction. And he's running right now. There he goes right now.
Okay, what is he doing?
He's running down the street.
R Buries' mother says her son often jogged for exercise.
I'm very, very sorry for your loss. I don't know what else to say.
William Bryan shot the infamous cell phone video.
I am not feeling safe at all. I haven't felt safe in at least 3 to 5 days now.
Protests have erupted across the country calling for justice. Justin Giboney heads the AND campaign, a Christian organization that focuses on social justice.
That video has shaken the nation as it should have. And I truly believe that Christians should be on the front lines when it comes to making sure that justice is served. Because this is one instance, but this is kind of symptomatic of something bigger that's in our society.
Support for R Buries' family has come in many forms, including the hashtag #IRunWithMaud. Christian music artist Torrin Wells posted about the case on social media and says he was criticized and lost some followers because of it.
If that's the price I have to pay for speaking up for someone who died so that their family can receive some sense of justice, farewell. May the Lord bless you and keep you. I pray a number 6 blessing on your life.
The elder McMichael, a former law enforcement officer, says he and his son tried to stop R Buries because of several recent break-ins in the neighborhood. However, local authorities say they only investigated one recent break-in involving an unlocked vehicle, and that happened a month before this incident. Many continue to cry for justice, some jogging 2.23 miles to reflect February 23rd, the day R Buries was killed. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
And Gordon, this case still stoking a lot of raw emotions and gaining national attention.
Well, it should gain national attention. What we're dealing with is they went out hunting. You look at this, you look at the video, you look at the circumstances here. They went hunting, and you can talk all you want about citizens' arrest and. You know, he was in a construction site looking around. Well, who hasn't tried to look at a construction site? He didn't take anything. He wasn't a burglar. He was a jogger. And to try to say, well, we're justified because we're trying to make a citizen's arrest. No, you're not. There are not a rash of burglaries in your town, in your neighborhood. The police have no record of that. So what in the world are you doing? And why are you going out with shotgun and a handgun in order to stop a jogger? It just doesn't make any sense. And there should be outrage over this, and there should be justice at the end. But we all have to start looking at why do we live in a nation where you have this kind of environment where a young African-American male can't go jogging through a neighborhood? Why do we have that kind of culture? What is it in us that is leading to this kind of behavior? There's no excuse for vigilante justice. There's no excuse for what happened.